English translation 558th contact. Saturday, the 20th of April, 2013, 13:28 hours.
Hello, Pta. There you are, my friend. Greetings and welcome.
Thanks. Greetings also to you. Are you feeling unwell because you seem to be in poor health?
I am, yes, but the discomfort will probably pass quickly. So you do not have to worry about my health, because it is already improving.
Whatever you say. Then I would like to inform you that 4 days ago I checked the 3-monthly record of the control device. On that occasion, I noticed your discussion and the decisions taken at the last General Assembly on the 5th and 6th of April regarding the matter of the Australian National Group, about which I have some things to say. But first we want to have a look at the pre-production of the photo book that Piero is working on. If you will please make an effort to write down what I have to say about it.
Okay, here is paper and is also a pen. Look here. This is the one Piero is working on. With the mouse, you can simply scroll page by page and look at everything. You can sit on my armchair while I use the sofa and write down your writing instructions.
Thanks.
After about 45 minutes,
I am very satisfied with this work done by Piero, and I am also really pleased with it. It will be a good book.
I think so too. Piero tries very hard. The 12 points that you instructed me to take into account, which still need to be considered, I will pass on to him right after our conversation.
Good. Then I would like to get back to what I said before we started the photo book tour. I have presented the recordings of your discussion and the decisions that you made and decided on the 5th and 6th of April at the General Assembly to our committee. We talked about this extensively and found that your discussion, which was far too lengthy, which is unfortunately always the case in group discussions, because it is often unnecessarily and thoughtlessly simply unrelated to the matter at hand, confusing and time-consuming, was fruitful, as were the resolutions. Short and concise discussions, factual explanations, speeches, and answers would be more beneficial, save time, and be less time-consuming and effective. Just listening to oneself like to talk does not bring any advantages but only disadvantages, which is why speech restrictions should be imposed on oneself, to avoid unnecessarily wasted time and not to drive the listeners into boredom.
While you are justified in pointing out where the bone of contention lies, this is not the case with the Australian National Group.
That is correct. Excuse me, but I wanted to mention what I said. Well, our committee has found the following points to be absolutely correct and true. 1. Each national group should and may only be active and responsible for its own country, and therefore should not have an impact on other countries. Consequently, each FIGU national group should only be autonomous and language-specific for its own country. 2. If a national group translates books and writings into the corresponding national languages, then these should and may only be distributed in their own country and not be sold or sent to other countries. 3. It cannot be permitted to accept advance payments for book printing from outside the country if such advance payments are connected with a related book delivery. Such advance payments and book deliveries to other countries are not permitted. 4. Donations for book prints, etc., both domestic and foreign as it is regulated, entitled to receive a free copy, free book. Donors for printed books, etc., pay the usual purchase price for the purchase of further works, which must be appropriate to the cost of self-production and the size of the book work, whereby postage and packaging may still be charged. 5. With regard to books translated and printed by national groups into their national language, it is permitted to send books, works to persons abroad if the persons receiving them belong to the country of origin in the same way as the national groups themselves, although the recipients must have left the country for a short or long period of time or must have emigrated. 6. The worldwide distribution of books, teaching, etc. to all countries is reserved solely for the Mother Center. Simyase Silver Star Center, Hinter Schmidrudi 1225, 8495 Schmidrudi. Switzerland, because this is the only way to avoid globalization and the amalgamation of different national groups from different countries, and to maintain the absolute independence of each group. A. The FIGU Mother Center during Billy's lifetime. After his death, the FIGU Association receives 50 free copies of each work translated and printed in a foreign language, which are sent from the FIGU Mother Center to all corners of the world, free of charge, as stipulated in the contract. B. All national groups of all countries are obliged to deliver to Billy or to the FIGU Mother Center, as required, any desired number of works from the books translated into their national languages by Billy Edward Albert Meier and FIGU, at cost price and with charging of packaging and postage. 7. The contracts with your person Billy, or with the FIGU Association, each for 7 years, are valid in their entirety and must be respected. If there is also a single rule broken in relation to a contract, it is to be dissolved and declared invalid as stated in the contract. 8. These rules and guidelines are necessary and inevitable to avoid a globalization of the worldwide FIGU associations, because such a globalization would be destructive in all respects, because an inevitable falsification of the doctrine, books and writings as well as of the mission itself would result. B. A worldwide sectarianism and ultimately a religion would emerge. C. There would be anger, enmity, strife, and other evil differences between the various national groups. D. Harmful and destructive mixtures would result from different views, doctrinal interpretations, and interpretations. 9. As far as your person Billy is concerned, it has to be such that you will dissolve existing contracts and not sign any more contracts with national groups if the fixed and given rules are broken in any way by the contracting parties. These are the basic facts which I have to mention according to our committee, and which you have also largely discussed and decided yourselves, which is quite reasonable and makes it clear that your General Assemblies are quite correct and capable of logical decisions.
Thanks, that is gratifying.
At the moment, I am thinking about the photo book and notice that in it, the pictures and the letter of the man who called himself Pergler are missing, but his name was W.B.
Will I still say Piero? To everything else is nothing more to say?
Everything necessary should be said and explained. If I think of anything else in the near future, I will tell you.
Then a question about being in love, as it is characteristic of many human beings on Earth, and which has nothing to do with an actual sentimental love. Falling in love is based on thoughts and feelings and visual forms, and accordingly on certain area functions of the brain. And all these factors together create an addiction that can last for weeks and months, and under certain circumstances even for a year or more. This is in contrast to sensual love, which does not fall in love and therefore does not become an addiction. It arises from love-impregnated feelings, which arise from the logic of the creational natural understanding of love, which is explained as
love is the absolute certainty that even in to live and exist with everything. So in everything exists, in fauna and flora, in our fellow human beings, in any material and spiritual life form of any kind, and in the existence of the entire universe and beyond.
In the spiritual teachings, this is interpreted as follows. Love is the absolute certainty that you live and breathe in everything that exists, in the world of animals, fauna, and in the world of plants, flora, in your own fellow human beings, in every material, solid, and spiritual primeval form of life form, of whatever kind, and in the existence of the universe, the entire heavens, and beyond. According to this interpretation of spiritual teaching, true love means that the human being coexists in everything and every existing thing with absolute certainty until the last vibration of his impulses. And to coexist in something means a total, unshakable inner, intimate, unanimous, sympathetic inclination, connectedness, and affection, which corresponds to unadulterated and true love. If there is true love in one human being for another, then both vibrate and exist together in an uplifting, inner and outer pulsating movement of a true certainty of inseparable togetherness and connectedness, without any addictive desire appearing. Truly, there is only a harmonious feeling of deep inner connectedness. True love and genuine friendship, which the human being must show for himself as well as for his fellow human beings, for the fauna and flora, all life and existence, are each an immensely valuable commodity in itself. And love and friendship are also connected with gratitude, both in relation to oneself and to one's fellow human beings, to the flora and fauna and to existence, life and all that exists, as is expressed in the teachings of the Spirit as a declaration of love through the love is the absolute certainty of that. How do you see the whole thing? By this I mean the difference between the two forms of love mentioned above, whereby in relation to being in love, this must be described as a pathological addiction.
No further explanation is necessary for this, because with your interpretation, everything is said and explained.
Well, then I want to ask again something about the Earth hopping, which is called space travel by our so-called space technicians and astronauts by the Earth hoppers, whereby the Russians call them cosmonauts and the Chinese taikonauts. You once said that the space of the world only begins where the gravitational influences of the Earth no longer exist. That is correct, or?
From the Earth's point of view, that is correct if the Earth's gravity is assumed. Basically, however, from the point of view of a planet, one can only speak of the actual space of the world outside the habitual zone.
Habitable zone in a solar system is the zone in which planets exist on which life is possible or given, which is why we also speak of the life zone or, in an outdated way, the ecosphere. And since the actual space of the world only begins outside the habitable zone of viable or life-bearing planets, I believe that astronautics, cosmonautics, and taikonautics can only be spoken of from there. Consequently, it is only there that the human beings experience the actual problems of coping with world space, which go far beyond the problems that arise for the orbital cosmonauts, as I want to call those who are launched into Earth orbit by rockets and are exposed to weightlessness in orbital stations, or weightlessness is dangerous for the human being's health.
This is indeed the case, because the problems that the actual space of the world poses for space travelers are much more extensive than those arising from stays in Earth orbit or when crossing the distance between Earth and the Moon. The basic condition for space travel inevitably requires the mastery of gravity, so that appropriate spaceflight devices must be equipped with devices that give them their own gravity. Without a spacecraft having its own gravity, which protects space travelers from weightlessness, they suffer life-threatening organic changes, which lead to death. Long-term weightlessness in Earth orbit alone is harmful to the human being's health because severe organic changes occur in the body, including brain shrinkage, etc.
So without a spaceship or any space vehicle having its own adequate gravity, which must be produced by apparatus and equipment, etc., to protect the human being from weightlessness, effective space travel is not possible? If there is no gravity in a spaceship, then in the long run, health damage will occur, which also leads to death.
That is correct. Mastering gravity is a fundamental requirement, but so is mastering and neutralizing the effects of the acceleration forces inside and outside the spacecraft.
You are probably referring to the acceleration forces which, on the one hand, do not create any pressure forces for the human being inside the spaceships, and which, on the other hand, can distort the material on the outside.
Yes, but I am not allowed to talk about how these forces are neutralized.
But it is correct that you absorb these forces with your technical possibilities?
Yes, that is correct.
Acceleration forces or acceleration pressure is, according to my understanding, the force that occurs as a result of inertia on free-moving bodies in accelerated systems. At least that is how I learned it. It is the force with which the human being in a vehicle, aircraft or rocket, for example, is pressed into a seat against the direction of travel or flight during each phase of propulsion or braking, or torn forward in the same direction as the direction of travel. Because I wanted to address this question to you, I copied something from the internet. Look here.
Often the magnitude of the total acceleration of a carrier system is also given in units of acceleration due to gravity. From this number, you can then read directly how many times its weight a body feels during an acceleration phase. The acceleration tolerance of the human being is very different from person to person and depends on the respective constitution as well as the duration and direction of action of the pressure. For example, a healthy pilot can tolerate 15 G-fall ejection seat, that is to say 15 times the acceleration due to gravity for a short time. In the first capsules of the Mercury program, 7G occurred during ascent shortly before the end of the burn, and up to 11G during the steep return. The latter corresponds to an acceleration of about 108 m/s, which also occurs if a vehicle were to be braked from 100 km/h to 0 in 0.26 s. On the Space Shuttle, the maximum acceleration during launch was limited to 3G and during re-entry to 1.5G. In order to get used to high-pressure forces that occur for a short time, every space flight training includes a compatibility test in large centrifuges that generate centrifugal force.
This is correct so far, but I do not want to talk about it. What I have been thinking about in the meantime is the 9 points discussed in the guidelines concerning the national groups. I would like to raise the following 2 points. 10. Under no circumstances should it be permitted for national groups to engage in language translation activities in a cross-national manner with other national groups. A national group should only carry out translation work in its own national language and should not mix up expressions, terms, and words that are foreign to its own language. It is unacceptable that the infant language of English should be made even more incomprehensible by mixing it. With other types of English incomprehension for this inadequate language is the fundamental factor in favor of this measure in this respect. In case of doubt, the FIGU Mother Center SSSC will provide suitable and appropriately correct expressions, terms, and words, as recognized by us and by Billy Edward Albert Meier as correct. 11. It is of fundamental urgency that not predominantly inadequate translations into other languages are made, but that in each national group the effort is made to learn the German language orally and in writing, and to maintain and also disseminate both in an appropriate manner. Only with the German way of speaking and writing is it possible to understand the teaching of truth, teaching of the Spirit, teaching of life correctly, and also to comprehend it according to the understanding, because outside of the languages German and Swiss German, all languages existing on Earth are absolutely inadequate in every respect with regard to correct interpretations. If further necessary explanations are required, inform Florena, after which she can inform me as usual.
I will do.
Surely the explanations, guidelines and instructions given will not be the last ones, because in the things mentioned, Earth humans still lack understanding of them, due to the subsequent intellectual correctness.
That is probably the case, because the Earthlings have their own logic.
A somewhat strange one, I would say. And because that is so, they are also unable to understand many things and are of the wrong opinion that their incorrect ways of thinking and acting are correct. But this is nothing more than a confused faith, which leads to dogmatism, discord, and strife, as well as to hatred, fanaticism, and war. This is a fact that has been evident among Earth humans for thousands of years, again and again and up to the present day, but which will also be proved long into the future. Out of all this illogicality, it is not understood that a correct order must be established and maintained if something is to really flourish and bring the desired benefit. And such an order must also be created by FIGU with regard to the mission and the spreading of the teaching of truth. Teaching of the spirit, teaching of life, including the creation of the national groups, which have to order themselves according to the instructions given to them. And only when they do this can there be a guarantee that everything will develop and be fulfilled in a free and valuable framework. This, however, requires that there is one head, the FIGU Mother Center, and all the subheads, the national groups, which remain absolutely autonomous and sovereign in their own country, but which freely form a unit with the FIGU Mother Center SSSC of Lucerne, which only gives the instructions and guidelines which serve the general existence and progress of all but which have to implement everything independently under their own direction and responsibility. This is the only way to avoid a fruitless and damaging globalization as well as a sectarian and religious system. And it is also important that no human being is lifted onto a throne, who, how, and whatever it may be, because the only thing that matters is the teaching that is to be spread and learned and implemented.
Your words are good, thanks. It is only to be hoped that they will be fully understood and accepted.
That will prove to be the case. But now it is time for me because other tasks are calling me. Farewell, Edouard, dear friend, and goodbye.
Goodbye, my friend, and take care, Para.